I am joined today by my friend Gilbert Sanchez. Uh, I've known Gilbert for quite a while. He's very, very good at GitHub Action stuff. He's much better at it than I am, and I am very thankful that he agreed when I asked him to come on this stream and hang out with me for an hour and do some chocolatey and GitHub Action stuff. So, Gilbert, go ahead, say hi, let everybody know who you are and what you're up to, and let's get started.
Sure. Yeah, first I want to thank you for inviting me. I know you reached out to our kind of a friend group and asked if anybody wanted to talk about GitHub Actions, and I immediately chimed in and said absolutely. I love GitHub Actions. So yeah, so I'm Gilbert Sanchez. You may recognize me online as Hey, it's Gilbert. I've worked at a few different large companies, leveraging Chocolatey in the past, and I'm a Chocolatey fanboy. I was just kind of thinking about it this morning, and I try to kind of push Chocolatey wherever I can, just because I think it's the best kind of enterprise packaging option. Stevie didn't tell me to pitch the company, but I just, I love it. So talking about GitHub Actions and Chocolatey together just made sense.
It's all right. Your check's in the mail. It's fine. All right. Yeah. So today, as mentioned, we are going to talk about using Chocolatey together with GitHub Actions. If you're not familiar with GitHub Actions, Gilbert is going to kick us off. He's going to take us through kind of what they are, how you can kind of approach them and think about them in a really simple way. And then we'll dive deep, right? We like to dive deep on these webinars. So we'll take a look at how you can set up some actions to do some really cool things. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll give you some real world kind of practical examples of how you can think outside of the box with what's available to you in terms of GitHub Actions, and Chocolatey. Now, what I'm going to show you today, the demos that I've got will work for any edition of Chocolatey. So our open source users that are leveraging Chocolatey, there's some stuff in here for you. For our enterprise customers, you can take everything that we show you here today and 10x it basically. You can make it much better, much more powerful if you've got those Chocolatey for Business features available to you to leverage those as well. So without further ado, Gilbert, if you want to share your screen and kick us off
Sure.
and kind of start walking us through GitHub Actions, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
All right, let's get this screen sharing. All right. Um, so when Stevie reached out to me, one of the things I wanted to sort of establish was kind of creating a GitHub organization. In my experience, this is sort of what teams tend to do. They make orgs for themselves, and there's a lot of really powerful features that you can leverage when you have an organization. Um, this is a demo organization. None of the code here is, production, but it's a great example of things you can do. But before I kind of dive into that, what I want to talk about are kind of the three cornerstones of how GitHub Actions work. So with GitHub Actions, you have workflows, you have actions, and then you have runners. Each of those things kind of plays on the other, and having a good understanding of what each does will help you understand how this system works overall. Um, I read a really interesting analogy. Somebody had referred to workflows as a playlist and actions as songs on those playlists. Another way I like to think about it is um, workflows are essentially uh, different jobs that run actions, and those actions can be like Lego blocks, right? So you can take different actions that you find throughout the web and kind of join them together to make something really interesting happen. Some of the demos that we'll go over today are very basic, but the goal is we'll start with basic and then we'll definitely move to more advanced. But what I want to show is that it's actually way more approachable than it necessarily seems. Sometimes when you just use an action off the shelf, you don't necessarily understand what's happening under the hood. And so I want to try to help folks understand that. So in this organization, we created a couple of repositories. I created a repository called Fake Package, and this repository, as it stands, is just this is everything except for this GitHub workflow is what you get out of Choco New, right? I ran Choco New Fake Package, and it created all these files. And so what we have is essentially a new spec that is exactly what you would get, right? There's a bunch of things in here that need to kind of get replaced. So that's kind of our starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and create our first action. Actually, not the first. I technically cheated and set something up ahead of time, but I'm going to create an action that is available as a workflow template, which I'll get into later, but I just kind of want to show this basic workflow. So what we have here is a workflow file that lives under .github/workflows and then a YAML file. Typically, the way that workflows are set up is they have a name, they have this on key, which defines when the workflow should run. So for this, we actually want this workflow to run when there are pushes to main. We also want it to run when there are pushes to pull requests made against main. And so again, this workflow is sort of the playlist, and under jobs are the songs, if you will. We have this build job that runs on Ubuntu latest. So what does runs on mean? Runs on is what the which runner it's going to use. And so you have on GitHub, you get a bunch of different types of runners available to you. Um, and so I'll add some links into the chat in a little bit, but you can actually go and take a look at what kind of runners are available. So if here we are running under Ubuntu latest, if we go look at this repository under github.com actions runner-images, you can see that Ubuntu latest is actually running Ubuntu 2404. What's nice about this repository is that it also tells you all the software that's included. And for us, we actually want to, that's kind of important because we want to know what software is available on the images. So we're using Ubuntu for this action, but before I get into steps, I also want to kind of call out that you have Windows 2019, 2022, and 2025. Um, one of the nice things is that um, all of the Windows runners include Chocolatey already installed. And I believe Stephen was telling me that Chocolatey is actually how they configured these runners. So Chocolatey was used to install all of these other things. Cool. So the other thing is there's a bunch of if I look for PowerShell, you can see that there's PowerShell 7.4 as well as Windows PowerShell, and you also get a bunch of modules that are kind of pre-installed. One that will come into play later is Pester. So Pester 3.4 and Pester 5.7. So if we jump back to the workflow, so we're looking at under our build job, it's going to run on Ubuntu latest. And now we're going to have, it's composed of two steps. This first step is checking out the repository. And then you can find a lot of those. This is a very common, almost every workflow uses this. It's checking out the local repository. There's a bunch of options. And I'll show some more examples of that later. And then the next step is that we run a one-line script. All this is running is PowerShell and its writing host. It says it's Choco time. So again, a very silly example, but you can combine this with a lot of different things to do, publishing documentation, build. Again, we're going to show you how to build packages. You can use it to notify. One thing before I move on is we talk about the runners that are available on the public GitHub. But if you're an enterprise customer, you can also have internal runners. So maybe a runner that's running on your internal network that has access to internal resources or an internal repository. So that's where you might want to think about that. And and again, you get the ability to run easily, be able to run actions on multiple OSs, right? I don't have a Mac device at home, but if I want to test test my things on Mac, that's an option, et cetera, et cetera. For chocolate packages, we obviously really only care about Windows. But again, if you had something that you needed another OS, it's available. And I think now, Stevie, you want to show off your. It's funny. I think you said that yours is your you think that I know more than you on actions, but this your demo is definitely way more advanced and something I haven't done, but I knew was possible, but it's still like really cool to see it in action. And it was also really fun to see you figure this out. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So, um, it's good that you mentioned the different kinds of runners that are available, and that we also have the ability to host our own self-hosted runner. So that's what GitHub calls runners that you can kind of have on your own infrastructure as a self-hosted runner. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to work out of the Cocoa Pods repository that is part of this Chocolatey Factory organization. And just to show you that there's no smoke and mirrors going on, I've got this Choco server here. And if we look and open up, let's not go to Task Manager. Let's actually open PowerShell. Um, so if we do a Git service on GitHub, actually, what is it called? I don't remember what it's called. So let's just look at services.msc. Let's go that way. The display name is GitHub, but I think they call it something different. So I've got a GitHub Actions runner uh, service running on this box, and it's connected to GitHub. So to set up a runner on your own network, you go to your repository. So everything happens and starts at the repository level. You can click on settings, and then in the settings of your repository, you will go down to actions, and then under there you go to runners. And you can see I've already got my runner listed in here. I just accepted the defaults when I was setting it all up. So it's got all the default labels and stuff, but you can see it's idle. It's waiting for an action to kick off. So if I wanted to add another runner on another box, I could click New Self-Hosted Runner and select Windows. I could pick my architecture. I can have x64 or an ARM-based runner as well. For our purposes, we want x64, and then you literally just copy and paste this stuff into PowerShell window and go. And it's all set up for you. Uh, you will have the ability to once you come down here and configure the runner, you do have the ability to change things like the name of the runner, the labels that are associated with it, etc. It's a real question and answer type wizard that it walks you through. So you do have some options for configuration, but I like to just accept the defaults because whatever, it's
So
fine. But in your environment, you might want to change things up, right?
so one example I usually point to is let's say for example you have a set of runners that have access to a higher privilege network.
Hmm.
And maybe those are runners that you tag a certain way, like high priv or something like that. Or maybe there's runners that you expect to live in a certain data center that you need you need the action to run in that particular data center. You can leverage tags that way. Um, uh, One thing I think is this is configuring a runner for this particular repository, which is again, this is also a very nice feature. You can have runners that are specific to repositories, and you can have runners that are specific to organizations, so sort of the level higher. And you can also have you can have runners at an even higher level. So if you're an enterprise customer, I think you can have runners that work for the entire org, or not org because org, but like
Yeah.
the entire instance can have access to these runners. So that's something to keep in mind is maybe you have a repository that handles sensitive packages that you need to keep hardened. Having a runner just for that repository is an excellent way to approach that.
Yeah, sure. I like doing the self-hosted runner thing as well, particularly in demos like this because it
Mhm.
allows me to have all of my code in public out on GitHub. So everybody watching this webinar today will have access to this code after I'm done. And then all I have to do is blow away the runner, and the actions will essentially be broken at that point. But the code's all available, and while I have my action running, it's got access to the repository and stuff that's running on my VM for the demos, so that I can ensure that, I've got a licensed version of Chocolatey, et cetera, et cetera. I've got all the bells and whistles to play with for the demos, and I don't have to worry about anything else. I can just shut it off when I'm done and go about my day, right? So, super, super cool that you're able to kind of leverage self-hosted runners for different demo situations, different networks, etc. Like Gilbert was saying, there's a whole host of reasons and use cases for self-hosted runners. The vast majority of you probably will want to run a self-hosted runner, particularly if you're going to do things like create packages and things like that with your runners, so that you have access to your particular repositories within your networks. And time permitting, I'm going to show you how I actually leverage GitHub Actions for all of the Chocolatey packages that I maintain on the Chocolatey community repository. Now, I will shamelessly admit that I stole the action code from one Mr. Josh King, our one of our operations engineers here at Chocolatey. He put together a really, really great blog post, and he kind of linked off to, but didn't really go in depth on how he set the actions up. So I do want to, if we have some time, make a pass over into that repository and check that out. But before we get there, I want to show off one, we'll call it an interesting use case for GitHub Actions. And to do that, we'll actually take a look at the action itself first, and then we'll actually walk through and do a demo. So, um, in this repository, I've got my .github folder, I've got my workflows folder, and then I've got this package.yaml file, which defines the workflow that I want to run when I do my cool thing later. So, we'll notice that I've named this thing new package issue, and what I'm going to do is I want this workflow to run anytime that somebody opens a new issue on this repository. And I'm going to set some defaults for every job that runs in this workflow. And I want every job that runs in this workflow to use PowerShell 7. So I'm going to
Hey
say,
Stevie,
hey, yeah, go ahead. Do you need me
do you
to
want to zoom
blow it
in a little
up?
bit? Yeah,
Yep. How's that? That look good? Thank you for the
better.
reminding.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So yeah, I'm going to set some defaults for every job, and I'm going to make it run on PowerShell 7. Now, in my particular case, I don't really need to use PowerShell 7, but I like it a lot better for things, so I default to using PowerShell 7. Now, the workflow that I've put together has a couple of different jobs inside of it. So the first job that is going to run is this create package job, and it picks up issues only that get tagged with this chocolatey package automation label. That's really important. So that means that I could have issues being created for like bugs and features and things like that. But I could also have issues that get created and this label gets added onto them where somebody just wants a new package, right? So When somebody raises an issue like that and it gets that label applied to it, I want this action to fire. So I can use that kind of conditional logic to control when this thing runs. And I give it the runs on. I'm going to use that self-hosted runner that we talked about a little while ago. So it's going to run on the VM that's running on my laptop right now. And we're going to give it a couple of permissions to the issues, right? So as this workflow runs, and we'll see here in a minute, we're going to do stuff to the issue kind of as we go. Um, and in order to do that, we need to be able to write to the issue itself. So we need to assign some permissions. So the very first thing, as Gilbert mentioned, pretty much every action you see checks out the repository, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to check it out. Now, there is a need for this because we need to run some PowerShell scripts that are included in this repository on the self-hosted runner. So that's why we check out the code. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be needed. But because we're going to run code on the box, we check out the repository. And the first thing that we do after we've checked out the repository is we put a comment on the issue that got created that says, "Hey, thanks for your submission. We're going to build you a new package." And we throw some reactions onto the issue. The next thing we do is based on the issue that got created, we need to parse it for information to use to create the package. So that's what we do. We get the body of the issue and we use a special variable. So there's dozens and dozens of special variables that you can use inside of your GitHub Actions. So when you're using issues, for example, the github.event.issue variable has a body property on it, and that body will be the contents of the issue itself. Now, in my case, I'm using YAML, or so it gets rendered in Markdown on the issue itself. So I capture that markdown raw, and then I need to parse that for all the information. So I've got this issue parser.ps1 file that I can give that body to, and it has a bunch of regex in it that does what I need to do to create all the stuff that I need to create to then pass on later. So once I've parsed the body, then I can make a package from a template. And this is where kind of building on the features of Chocolatey and then leveraging them inside of GitHub Actions gets really, really cool. So I've got a template that I've created that uses all of the information gathered from an issue and creates a package based on that information. So things like what do you want the package ID to be? What do you want the version to be? Where do we go to download the installer? What's the name of the software when it's in programs and features? All of the stuff that's important for a Chocolatey package to get created is in this script as a parameter. So then I just run my build script and I use this hash table to provide all the parameter information. And you'll notice that I'm again using another variable that's available as a GitHub Actions to take the output from the previous step and use it. So part of what this issue parser does, and we'll look at this in a second, is it creates all of these different outputs. So I output the package ID as a property on this object, the version, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a special way that you do that inside of your PowerShell code to emit the information to an environment variable. And then this steps thing just kind of parses that information off of the environment variable. And then the dot body part is the ID of the step that you care about. So if it was a different step that I cared about, it would be steps dot whatever that ID was, and maybe the outputs for that or whatever. And we'll use that a little later as well. So I run all that. We get a package built. The next step is to publish the package. So again, we're going to run a PowerShell script. The temporary directory that we created to store the Chocolatey package that gets built is again emitted as an output of the package step. So I say steps.package.outputs and I get that temp directory. And then for my source and my API key, I'm actually storing some secrets in this repository. So I can use the secrets variable to pull those individual secrets into the um, source and API key parameters here. And then I just run my publish step, and that puts the package into the repository. Um, After that package has been published, I want to update that issue comment and let folks know that the package is done and it's been published. So all I do is I come back up to, and again, uh, I grab the ID of the step that created the comment. So I conveniently called that ID comment, and then it automatically outputs a comment ID, so the ID of the comment on the issue, so that I can update that exact comment, and that's kind of built into this creator update comment action that you can use. I'm not going to go off. You can read the documentation later, but this is an extremely well documented GitHub action that gives you pretty much copy and paste the code and then change little details like the body of stuff that you want. So all I'm saying is, hey, the package has been created and published. You can install it with this command, and then I give you the exact chocolate command that you need to run to install the package. Now, there's one little nitpick that I should have fixed and I have it, but I didn't add -y to this command, so it's going to prompt you unless you have allow global confirmation turned on. But uh, nobody's perfect, right? So, and then again, I add another haraction or reaction here. I just have this hooray reaction, the like little party firework thing gets added onto the issue, and then I close it once it's done. So. Um, we can do that. So that's kind of walking through the issue itself, and
Before
to
you
see
jump,
that, yeah,
can
absolutely, go for it. What
can
do
I
you want?
jump? Can I
Yep.
just comment on a couple of things? If
Yeah.
you go
Sure. Sure.
back,
Sure. Yep.
so
What do you
this
got?
is so this is like an excellent example of how you would mix both your own internal um, pieces of code with actions that are available in the marketplace, right?
Hmm.
The creator update comment is an action that's available on the marketplace that we didn't, Stevie didn't have to write that. We didn't have to, we didn't have to understand all the underlying Git, you know, pieces required to update the comment or create the comment, etc. And we can just pull that, read kind of their documentation, and then leverage it. And so this is an excellent example of like taking our pieces and layering them with public facing
Sure.
actions.
Yeah.
Um,
You
yeah,
kind of stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Like somebody
this
way smarter than me figured this all out, so all I had to do was borrow it. It's great. Actions are awesome. There's so many of them. So many. All right, so let's actually
oh
see yet
one
another
one
thought.
last thing.
What do
I
you
know.
got? Go for it.
So you
What?
I wanted to ask earlier, but so right the very top you have
Hmm.
default run shell
Hmm.
pwsh, and
Hmm.
this is something that probably will matter, may matter, right?
Hmm.
If you're running on Windows PowerShell, how do you get it to run Windows PowerShell versus PowerShell 7?
So the shell will be PowerShell to run Windows PowerShell, and that's kind of the default shell, anyways,
Mhm.
on Windows. So if you don't have this at all, and you just say run, and then you give it a PS1 file, or you write some
Mhm.
PowerShell code, it's going to run in PowerShell. So um,
And
now,
that's PowerShell spelled out
yep, yep, exactly.
PowerShell. Ooh,
Yep,
common B.
yep. Literally the word PowerShell. Yeah,
Spelling bee.
exactly. Exactly. And you'll notice it's not like pwsh.exe or
Hmm.
PowerShell.exe. It's just the word pwsh or PowerShell. So yeah, by default it's PowerShell. You'll notice here too that I'm defaulting my shell to pwsh, but I didn't do anything in my action to ensure that PowerShell 7 was installed on the box. Now, I probably should, and you probably should too, if you're watching this. Um, and especially if you're using a self-hosted runner, ensure that if you do this, you've got PowerShell 7 on the box. Now, I already know that PowerShell 7 is on mine, so I didn't bother because I put it on literally everything I build. Um, so that's just kind of me letting muscle memory take over and just knowing that I have PWSH and not think about it. So, something to be cognizant of. I'm defaulting to PowerShell 7. You might need to install PowerShell 7 on your boxes if you do this sort of thing in your environment and you don't have it. Just something to be cognizant of. Now, this is where kind of the rubber hits the road and we start to have fun, right? So we've defined what this action looks like, um, and kind of walk through what it does. Let's actually use the dumb thing, right? So I'm going to go to issues, and you can see that literally nobody is perfect. It took me 20 times to get this right and get it to work, right? So we can go through all the issues that didn't work, but Stevie, thinking ahead, if we click on the actions real quick, there are no previous workflows. I have hidden my sins away from everybody else, so we can't see all the nonsense that I had to go through to get this working. But now that it is working, we can go here and we can say new issue, and you'll notice something pops up. So by default, typically when you turn on issues for a repository, you get a generic, give it a title and just a blank page to fill in all the stuff that you want, right? Um, but you also have the ability, in the same way that you can create workflows, you can create issue templates. And we can look at that in a minute. But you can define issue templates in YAML or Markdown. I choose YAML because I hate myself, and spacing is something that, why not? But uh, by doing that, you get nice, like, form-based stuff that you can just fill out, right? So, one of the annoying things is you really can't like hide this add a title thing, but you can kind of partially fill it out. So, I default it to, new chocolatey package request, and then we can give it some information. So, let's build VLC because it's a small one and pretty easy. It doesn't take very much time. So we're going to build VLC, and actually, you know what? I'm going to make this a little bit easier to read later. We'll say VLC. We'll give it an ID, and I know this exists on the Chocolatey community repository already, but we're just going to do this anyway. So we're going to say VLC download. Go to VLC, and I'm going to very specifically grab the link for the 64-bit download. So I'm going to come over here, say copy link address, go to issues, or go over here, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to paste this in here first, and then I'm going to grab the version as 3.0.21, and then this is where Chocolatey for Business, if you're a C4B customer, you can make this even simpler. All you're going to need is a download URL and then a slight tweak to your build script to just say choconew dash dash URL and let us figure out the silent arguments, right? So that's fine. But for our open source friends that might be on the call today, I decided, you know what? Let's give them a simple way to build packages as well, or show them how they could leverage this kind of stuff as well. So I happen to know that the silent arguments for the VLC installer are /s, and I happen to know that the valid exit codes for this particular thing are 0 and 1223. Now, I don't know what 1223 means. I just know that it's a valid exit code. So, if we go further on, we can say that this is produced by Videoland, the name of the company behind it, and I've hit my tab key or my caps lock. So we'll say Videoland. It is an executable as determined here. So we'll say it's an executable, and then as it shows up in programs and features, this is going to be VLC media player, and then we can give it a description, which will go into the metadata of the package, which is useful for like chocolatey GUI and stuff later. So we can say uh, a great open source video player that you should use. And we're going to create this issue. Now, when I create this issue, I have my issue template set up in such a way that it automatically adds this label for the chocolatey package automation. So now when we click on actions, we have our workflow running because that condition that I've set inside of my action is true, right? So I've said, hey, when somebody puts in a new issue, an issue's created, and it gets tagged with that chocolatey package automation label, I want this action to run. So if we dive into this, we can kind of see it working as we go through. So if we go here, we can see that thank you for your submission, blah, blah, blah. And it just updated for us because it published that package and it gave us that install command and then it closed it. Now, just to show you that there's no smoke and mirrors going on behind the scenes, if we come over here and we do a Choco source list, I can show you that the only sources that I have available currently are ones that are running on this box. So I've got um, this repository here, it's my production one, and then literally every other repository is disabled. So the community repository, the license repository, my test repository, all unavailable. So when I do a Choco search for VLC, I'm not going out to our Chocolate Community repository. I am going to find that package on my internal repository. So the action, the self-hosted runner, has access to my internal repository, has published that package for me, and now I can say Choco install VLC -y, and once this is done, I'll have a VLC icon on my desktop, and the magic will happen in just a second. That's why I picked VLC because it's super, super quick to run and be done.
You forgot to mention on your comment, you got your reactions, which is something I need to
Mhm.
start using more of. That is very
Yeah, it's
that
super.
is very
It's
nice.
fun, right? I didn't have them at first, but I was like, you know what? Let's get a little fancy, right? So now
Nice.
we've got that VLC icon on our desktop. We can open it up. VLC opens. Here it is. Like no smoke and mirrors. It's a real app. It's delivered as a chocolatey package. So that's a real world example of how you can leverage an issue on a repository to solve a problem of somebody requesting a piece of software, right? Now, in my example, I do bad things, right? I say, hey, make me this package, and I immediately publish it and it's available and people can use it right away, right? You can have actions that have approvals and things like that. So you can stop. So I could have an action that, creates the package and publishes it to a test repository first, right? And then I could have an action that maybe runs and does a whole bunch of like pester stuff to validate that that package is good and works in my environment and does all of that stuff. And then waits, right? So we build the package and we publish it to test. We trigger another workflow that does all that kind of automated testing stuff. And then we wait. We sit there and we pause and we say, hey, a human has to literally come in here, read the results of these tests, do any other manual operations that they need to do, and then click the go gadget button that kicks off the other workflow that picks that package out of the test repository and moves it over to the production repository. So I'm giving you only a piece of the action here because I don't know exactly what that's going to look like in your environment, right? Every environment's different. Everybody has different requirements. The pester tests are going to be different. We do have some pester tests available that you can use as like a baseline inside of this organization. I don't know, Gilbert, if you want to show those off here in a
Yeah.
minute. But Um, that's the sort of stuff that you can do, and I'll kind of leave it to you guys as homework, right?
Yeah,
To be able to go out and kind of figure that stuff out. And
yeah.
I'm gonna pause there for a second because I imagine that we might have
Questions,
some
maybe.
question and answer stuff, which doesn't look like we have any open, so that's good.
I do.
Somebody
I do
said
want to
Josh
call
King,
out
everybody. I don't know who that is, but that is hilarious. That's an inside
probably
joke for
Josh.
PowerShell Summit people. I approve. That's hilarious.
Um, you mentioned that this is, this is an example, right? You can imagine a scenario where, like you said, there's GitHub has environments where you can say, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to go do this in our stage environment, and then maybe that goes out and installs that version of the package to a set of machines, or maybe that's just the approval process. You could
Hmm.
imagine there are security scanners that you could, kick off and have, maybe before it even creates the package, it takes that executable and scans it. So there's all sorts of things that you can kind of hook in and do with actions.
Hmm.
Again, it's the Lego block that you can kind of just you find and you have a workflow and you're like, wait, I want to add this. It's just kind of inserting that Lego block into that kind of chain. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. Um, I see Harrison has his hand up. If you could ask your question in the Q&A so that we can see it, we'll be able to answer it live here on on air, as it were. Um, and that goes for everybody. If you've got a question, please use the Q&A panel so that we can kind of track it and don't lose sight of it. Oh, one thing that I was going to show you, the issue thing. So if we go back to the code, and we go to our .github folder, you can create this issue underscore template folder, and that's where all of your custom issues live. So you can have, as many issues as you want inside of here. And I've got a new package.yaml file, and inside of here, if we look at the code, um, this is kind of what that looks like, right? So the body's going to be a markdown body. That's how we get that markdown content. Um, and then we do all of the different fields as YAML. So we've got an input for the package ID version, stuff like that. And then you can do different things. So there's a drop down for installer type as well. And there's a text area so that you can do the description. There's a couple of other options as well, but these are probably going to be your most common ones, right? And for drop downs, you can have your options as well. That's how I build out the exe and the MSI. And then in terms of validations, you can do different validations and things like that. In the validations, this is how you mark things as required, given the like little red star. So I think everything on here is required because I pass it to the template. The only thing that might not be required is because I forgot to put it on there, is the software author. So we've got a
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you wanna? There's some good
couple
questions
of
in here.
questions. Um, so the packaging of VLC was being done on my VM. Yes, so that was being done on my VM because I'm using the self-hosted runner. Um, and literally anybody can do this stuff. Like there's nothing stopping anybody from doing this stuff. Um, it's easier when you have Chocolatey for Business because you don't have to know as much stuff to do things. You can just kind of fire it and forget it. And then there's some additional features on the back end that make consuming those packages and using those packages easier. Particularly in an enterprise, so the benefits for C4B are apparent here as well, right? There's less that you need to worry about. It's a much simpler issue template that you would need to create, less infrastructure that you need to worry about on the back end and maintain as well, right? I had to write a lot of like boilerplate stuff to make this work with custom templates and all that stuff. With C4B, you don't have to worry about literally any of that. You can just give it a URL and we'll do the rest. Um, so that's how that all works. Do you want to take the next question after that, Gilbert? So this
Sure.
question is, how does GitHub securely access a local runner?
Yeah, I actually wanted to add a little bit to your previous answer. So I think because Stevie had a chocolatey source that was his own internal repository, he was publishing it to that repository. And so you can imagine in an enterprise, you might have own enterprise internal repository using different software, right? And then having it published to that. And so then if all your devices are pointing to that internal repository, now they have access to that application. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an excellent way to bring in external applications into an org without,
Hmm.
requiring, you know, all your cross-functional partners to necessarily know how to create packages. Um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and I think GitHub has quite a bit of documentation on how the self-hosted runner security stuff actually works. Like,
yeah.
if you want nitty-gritty details about how all that works, they do have some really in-depth documentation on all that stuff because there's a lot of enterprises that are doing really secure stuff that need self-hosted runners, but also access to GitHub. So they've got a really robust set of documentation for the security stuff around it.
I think as far as the connecting, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe what it is there's an agent running on
Hmm.
the server that is connecting, potentially over WebSocket. I don't remember exactly,
Yeah, I can't
but that
remember.
creates a secure connection between the server. So it's the server's kind of constantly telling it like, "Hey, I'm
Yeah,
ready for a job," and then the action will
yeah,
send it the job.
yeah, yeah. I'm fairly confident that it's a WebSocket. I think you're correct. Trent, you asked a question. What are some other ideas for using issue automation? Um, Gosh, there's so many, right? Like that, the sky is
Handing out handing out
literally,
tickets to the team, right?
yeah,
That's one way I've
yeah,
seen it.
yeah, sure. Um,
Um, Prompting for additional information that you need, right? Maybe part of your team's flow is to tag your issues a certain way so that they can get to the right group. That's potentially something that could happen. So you could say, hey, there's a new issue. It doesn't have one of these sets of tags. Prompt the user to go and add the tag, and then maybe you have something that says, like Stevie's code is once something is tagged with a certain thing, go grab that and take more actions on it.
yeah. There's probably there's probably a way, and I would have to play with it, but I would imagine that using an issue like this would be a really good way to use internalizer as well.
Mm.
Um, because you could have a a mix and match of things going on where you've got a self-hosted runner that has C4B licensing that lives in a network that has internet access, for example, and then you could have an issue template that says, "Hey, I want to pull in, package X, Y, and Z from the Chocolatey community repository," and then you could have like checkboxes and stuff like that to control the different options that you have available for the chocolate download command. So you might want to allow folks to, download vscode.install, for example, or something like that uh, from the chocolate community repository and internalize it. But not worry about any of the dependencies. So have a checkbox to ignore the dependencies, or have a checkbox to turn on and off the actual internalized flag. So um, by default, when you Choco download something, it just pulls the nupkeg off of the Chocolatey community repository and doesn't rewrite anything. But if you add the internalized flag with the package internalizer feature, it will actually inspect the package, find any URLs that are inside of it, and pre-download the binary and rewrite it so that package becomes 100% offline once it lands inside of your network. So you can have a really easy way that you don't have to worry about like running any sort of web infrastructure yourself. You could just have a website or a GitHub repository that literally has nothing in it but an issue and a workflow, and just tell people to go there to do things. And then that opens up the ability to, like integrate that with things like ServiceNow, et cetera, where you give them a button that sends them off to the issue page directly to do stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff that you
Yeah.
could do with this stuff. And literally, the sky's the limit. Like it's insane what you can do with automation once you kind of take the blinders off and start looking around and seeing what's available. It's really, really cool. Um,
Having
Couple
access to
things.
essentially compute that you can trigger is really, really handy, right? And kind of like what you're saying is like, and again, let's say you do this process and then you want to, security says, hey, we want to sign off on every package coming in.
Yeah.
You just edit this your workflow YAML file to just add, another action that does the, approval flow, and that's, a handful of lines of, YAML, and you're
Hmm.
done, right?
Yeah.
So it's really extensible. Um, I I will briefly mention that's way out of topic of this is that GitHub does have the ability for you to um, have webhooks so that you can watch your GitHub repositories or organization, so you can have external tools actually be the thing that initiate that so it can go both ways essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, you can absolutely do all kinds of stuff. David Falconer asked that he has C4B. How do I get in touch with a Choco partner to go over some of this? Um, if you are a Chocolatey for Business customer, David, put a ticket in, and one of our support guys will reach out to you. And then if needed, they'll get me involved or somebody from our sales team or solutions team involved, depending on what your needs are. And we can have that conversation over there. So if you've not reached out to support before from a licensed node of Chocolatey, you can run the Chocolate support command, and that will give you your options to reach out to us via your support agreement. Um, if you don't have a support agreement, but you have Chocolatey for Business, I would recommend going to chocolatey.org, scrolling all the way to the bottom, or finding the community link and asking a question on Discord. And we can help you out over there. And that goes for anybody that is open source Chocolatey as well. If you've got questions around any of this stuff and you don't have commercial licensing, community assistance is available on Discord, so you can ask your questions over there. Now that's best effort. There's no SLA around it, but we're usually pretty quick to get answers over there. A bunch of us that are on staff that work at Chocolatey hang out in the Discord all day, so we're typically pretty quick to answer stuff. So happy to help answer any questions you guys have. I'm going to go ahead and
Wait,
mark a
how we doing on
couple of
time?
these off. We are like right at time, so I actually need to kind of wind this stuff down and start doing a little bit of cleanup here. So I'm going to pop up a poll. It's a real quick one question poll. It says, "Hey, do you want a demo of the license stuff?" If anything you've seen here is interesting. If I've mentioned anything about this stuff being even cooler with licensing, and you want to talk about it, um, go ahead and fill that poll out, and somebody from our sales team will reach out to you to set up a conversation. Um, there is at the end of the stream, once everything closes and you leave, you'll be sent to a browser window that's got a survey. We do want feedback. Tell us how we did. And then if you've got any ideas for additional webinars that we can do in the future, any topics that you want covered, please fill that in and let us know. We've got a bunch of feedback over the past couple webinars about packaging. People are craving information about making packaging easier, etc. I hope that the example that I put together today gave you some ideas about how you can make packaging a little bit easier in your environment. And we'll give you all the code and everything that we use today after the webinar's over. We're going to put together a resources email and send that out. So if you're worried that you're not going to remember all this stuff, fear not. We've got you covered. We'll see all that in a future email coming up. Um, and I want to let everybody know that we are taking the month of July off. We are not going to have an Unwrapping Chocolatey webinar stream in the month of July. Um, I need a break. Stevie's going on vacation for a while. So I'm going to go away, rest and recharge, as I hope all of you guys do as well over the summer. And then we will come back in August and we'll have some more really,
Sorry
really
about that.
cool content for you. So I'd like to thank Gilbert for hanging out with me today and going through things. It's been great hanging out with you. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you had as much fun as I did because I love doing this stuff. So to everybody on the webinar, thank you guys for joining. We do this stuff for you, and this brings me a whole bunch of joy. I love doing this stuff and putting these on for you guys. So thank you very, very much, and we will see you all at the next one. Take care. Have fun.
Thank you.